Hello everyone, welcome to Technology Management Unit number 5. In this unit, we're going to be talking about the digital business strategy. So let's go very quickly to it. In the first slide, I want you to watch this video about this brand called Peloton. So in this video, I want you to see how a successful business model works well. They have a completely digital strategy. So you'll see how of course, I mean they didn't have a transition from analog from legacy to digital, right? But the way they plan it, it's very successful, and I think they did very well. So I need you to watch that video for me. Not with me. Very good. So what is a digital business strategy? So when we talk about strategy, we need to think of not just changing a couple softwares, meaning many companies have this misconception that by implementing, for example, an ERP, that makes it a digital business, and that is not the meaning of it. Digital business strategy means that we need to go back to redefine what really we want to give to the consumers, right? What is the ultimate product? What need are we satisfying, right? So when we think of what need we're satisfying, how can we enhance that product or service through technology? Meaning that we have to change a couple of platforms. We need to change the business model in a specific way so that we can deliver that product or service in a much more efficient way, right? So in this case, for example, when we look, for example, at different digital business models, we have very different types of them, like subscription, on demand, etc. But let's go back to the main core of them, right? So when we think, for example, of Netflix, we can think of what is the main, the main service or the main product in here. So here is entertainment, right? We're not talking about variety, we're not talking about speed, we're talking about how to provide better content, more efficient, that they can browse it in a more effective way, and that they're engaged into the platform. So based on that, we will set up the structure, which in this case, it could be the servers, what servers we're using, how do we connect with the consumer? Are they watching it through a mobile platform or a computer? So when we start to think of that, we can improve the whole strategy of the whole company, right? We're going to think of that. We're going to think of the programmers. We're going to hire the algorithms that we're going to use to show the information, etc., so that the viewing experience is flawless. And at this point of time, somehow it's like that. Well, not so much, because actually some of the algorithms already start to become biased. For me, I watch a lot of things, and then suddenly I get recommendations for things that I only saw once. But so in this case, they have to change those things, right? So in this case, when we are thinking of a digital business strategy, when the strategy is not clearly defined, when we really don't know what really we're pursuing as a business, we can have missed opportunities, because in the end, we're not using enough digital resources to fulfill those needs, right? So we also don't know the real direction of the company, where really we're heading. This is important because, again, just changing a software doesn't mean that it's digital. That means perhaps we're complicating more the process, or we're making more inefficient because we're not really thinking of what we want to deliver. We also need to think that we have to, when we craft a digital strategy, we need to integrate everything. So that means that everybody has to be in line rather than creating silos, right? These silos are finance has this certain system, marketing has another system, and they don't connect the data constantly, and then the data doesn't flow throughout the whole company. So in this case, that doesn't generate value, and that is bad for the company, because in the end, you're not going to be able to really use information effectively. And then, of course, we have to, when we do an effective digital strategy, we have to think of resource wastage. If we have two systems, two platforms, two servers, that generates duplicity of resources, and we don't want that. We want to have few resources and maximize them and be as effective as possible. So in this case, we have to think, in the strategy, we have to think of the digital channel strategy. So which channels we're going to be using, what is going to be our focus, right? Or are we going to focus on everything also? No, it's going to be a more holistic approach where we use mobile commerce, we use social media to connect, we use social CRM in order to connect with the consumers. Are we going to focus on the back of the house, which is more the supply chain and the e-procurement as well? So again, we're thinking of more back of the house, front of the house. So anyways, if we think of focusing on the front of the house, the consumer, we also have to have the back of the house. And it's not the other way around. So for example, if I have good digital strategy at the operational side, maybe I'm not selling my products online. Maybe I'm just delivering in a more effective way. But the moment that I decide to go for e-commerce, then all my back of the house, all the supply chain and the procurement has to fit that e-commerce strategy. Here we have, for example, to see how online shopping transactions are changing, right? We can see that which platforms of e-commerce are leading here in Korea. So anyways, in this case, again, we're always thinking of multi-channel strategies. Like I said before, by setting the e-commerce, we understand that we want to touch the consumer in many ways. We want it to be effective. If they go to the shop, they are able to search, to browse, to taste, to feel. But if they don't find a certain product, we are thinking of maybe doing delivery, or they can see in the catalog and still purchase it. They can try, but if there's not their size, then perhaps we can find an option. So it's connecting again and touching the consumer in many places, and they can get information about the product as much as they can. Here we have, for example, the Nike Plus platform. So the Nike Plus platform is aiming to connect all the information in many areas so that you are connected to the brand. This is a sort of CRM, customer relationship management, where you connect to the shoes, you get information, that information is shared, you belong to a community, and somehow you continue working and buying that brand, because in the end it fulfills not only the product side of not only the product needs, but also we are searching to fulfill the social needs of the consumer as well. So in this case, we need strategy process models for digital business, and we're going to talk about some of them, right? So this is a generic strategic model that we have. It doesn't go all the time like this, because this is generic because it goes in order, follows a certain flow. If you see, starts from 1, 2, 3, 4, but in reality sometimes it doesn't work like that. We have to go more by department, or we have to test in another ways, because again, the operation sometimes doesn't let us do what we want in order we want. But anyways, if we go to a generic one, we have to think of first a strategic analysis, external, again, the pestle, what is going in the macro environment, and how can we match the macro environmental needs with the internal resources. Second, we have to think of the vision and mission, which again, we have to think really what do we want to offer the consumer. By going back to the original ethos of what the company is about, right? Delivering what, right? In this case, for example, we can say Disney. What is the ethos of Disney? So we can think, well, they are trying to deliver experiences and entertainment. So how are they going to able to deliver those experiences? And that's the objective. Deliver this. Let's look, for example, at the Disney Plus platform. The objective is to bring that entertainment and those experiences also to to streaming platform, not so much anymore of depending on external platforms that perhaps offer content that is not related to Disney, like Netflix. Yeah, there they have Disney movies, but in the end, they have also another content that perhaps doesn't fulfill the what company wants to sell, that Disney wants to sell. So in this case, we have to think of the strategic definition. We have to think how we, for example, for Disney Plus, how this option is going to work, right? Evaluate it, and whether there's on any other options. Can we continue to stream through Netflix, through other platforms, or do we really want to focus on doing it by ourselves? Do we want a larger distribution, or we want exclusivity of content? No, so in this case, they have chosen exclusivity of content. So here comes the strategic implementation, which is for that side going digital in terms of digital content. Goes the planning, the execution, and the control. When we look at Disney Plus, the planning and the execution, the planning was fantastic. I mean, they thought maybe we will just start with the American market. We will start with X number of users, and then went the execution. But in the execution, there were hiccups because the first day that they opened, their service was gone. So again, these are the kind of things that we have to think about and see whether really what we planned was strategically planned, and whether, again, we have the internal resources to fulfill that strategy that we wanted, right? So in this case, when we think of the strategies, we can think of the prescriptive strategy, which first of all, we're looking at the strategy in a more sequential way, right? We plan the strategy, the plans, and we go one by one, step by step, and nothing is done at the same time, okay? In an emerging strategy, perhaps we have some urgency. We need to cope with the industry needs very quickly, and then we will do it all at the same time. And then they're interrelated, but they are developed together all at the same time. So in this case, we always have to do strategic analysis. We have to think, when we're thinking of a digital strategy, we have to think where technology is going to deliver value. In this case, for example, it can be in logistics, in the operations, in the marketing, in the service. Where can we generate more value with this new digital strategy? So, like I said, when we think of that, where we can deliver value, we have to think what resources we have, so that based on those resources, we implement the technology where perhaps we're lacking resources, or we need to strengthen those resources, right? Let's say, for example, we have the resource of a warehouse, like we have here in the image, right? So how can I use technology to enhance the inventory management? So in this case, that works, right? So we have to think of my resources is a warehouse. It's weakened because I have very little human resources to manage that warehouse. So if I install an RFID system, it will be much more effective, because that means with little people, I can know the inventory very quickly. So when we're thinking of digital business development, it goes from 0 to hero. What's 0? 0, you don't even have a website. Nobody knows you're there online. This one let me put a very simple example of an Achuma that sells apples on the street. She's not even a company, nobody knows about her, or maybe just a small supermarket near your house. They don't have any website or any web presence, right? No, nothing. But maybe if we look at the level 1, we start to see that, for example, that supermarket nearby your house, that's no website, but when you look for supermarkets in the area, appears on Google, appears on the list, right? Maybe appears its address, and that's it. Nothing more. Now, level 2 will be that same supermarket starts to put, let's say, for example, all the products that they have. That's it. But no prices, nothing. Maybe some description of the most common products that they have in there, but you cannot buy them. You cannot retrieve more information about it. It really is like static. The level 3, we have a simple interactive site. You already start to see more the products. You can search them in different way. Maybe you can start to compare them, and maybe you can ask questions whether, for example, you ask them if they deliver certain products or not, or they can open on certain times or so. Now we go to level 4, where we already can see options of buying, but still very limited, right? Maybe has very limited services in terms of buying. And then we have the level 5, which this one comes at the whole buying process happens. You can ask queries, you have ways to interact with the brand, you have ways to connect with other users, there's a community, there's a lot of exchanging of information back and forth. Right? So in this case, again, we always have to think of the SWOT analysis when we're developing this digital strategy. What are the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats? So in these strengths, for example, when we talk about here again the Disney Plus, we can think of the Disney Fox, right? The strength is a lot of content, we have it. The weakness is, in this case, when we look at platforms like Netflix, they already have way more experience when it comes to the development of the algorithms, the technology, the servers, the data collection and data development, etc., etc. But they have that weaknesses. Opportunity, the streaming market. The streaming market is huge, so that's why Disney Plus comes in and says, I have strength in all of these brands, and then I have an opportunity to put them online. What is the threat? That if I implement this, people don't want to leave Netflix and they want to stay there, which is, it didn't happen, no? But I mean, of course, they did a good. We're talking about Disney. They did their homework to see whether it will work or not, no? So in this case, they did their marketing research, and then that threat, of course, was minimized because they do have the competencies and the core competencies to make this happen, right? So in this case, again, we have to think of the external capabilities. We have to think whether we have some internal capabilities, and then whether there's external forces that push us to do it or not. Okay. We also have to think of the Porter's 5 forces and how they work on online. They work slightly different than from online, because in this case we can think of the power of buyers, the bargaining power of buyers online. It might be huge because there's more consumers from many different markets as compared to only one market where physically we operate in. Bargaining power of suppliers, again, let's discuss a little bit of rather than the Disney Plus, let's talk about the Netflix, right? The Netflix in this case, power of buyers. Yeah, power of buyers is very strong digitally for Netflix. Because why? Because they can change to other platforms, to Hulu, to Amazon, to HBO, to etc. Not here in Korea, but in the American market it does. When we think of the bargaining power of suppliers, it's also very strong. If the video studios decide to pull their content out of Netflix, Netflix is left with zero. Precisely because of that threat, they saw the opportunity of doing the Netflix originals and start to produce their own content, because they knew that there's a threat from substitute products and services, and then they decided to say, well, if I don't produce my own stuff, then at some point I will be left with nothing. Barriers to entry. If you want to stream, you need a lot of capital and you need a lot of connections and you need to do it. So in this case, barriers to entry are difficult. But in this case, for example, although the barriers of entry are difficult, Disney made it. Because they have the capital, they have the strength. But there's million platforms that don't make it. I think there's, for example, some Korean networks that they have tried their streaming services, but somehow they don't have that strength. So in this case, they haven't worked that well. So the rivalry in online for streaming is very strong. In this one also we talk about the threat of substitute products. We can talk about fake downloading or pirate movies, right? So also we have an issue with that. So now in this case, when we set the implementation, we set the strategy, we have to think of the performance management systems. We need to monitor whether the strategy is working or not. So for first we need to see whether we need to measure the internet revenue contribution. So from all the channels that we have, physical and digital, which ones are generating more, and how much they are generating. The same thing, we have to look at the e-commerce. We have to think of the conversion marketing, which is how much people spend their time on their website, on our website, how they click, what they click, and whether they buy or not, or they are just browsing, but they don't buy anything. And then we have to think of the e-channel service contribution. In this case, we have to think of all the channels that we have. If we have, for example, a website, we have a social media, we have some other platforms, which one contributes the most to our profit? Okay. Then we go to this, and this one is very related to your assignment. And actually, I'm going to stop here and I'm going to go into a different video so you can know how to do it for your assignment.